Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Interview.
Martin, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I figured something out over on, I think it was on Monday, but you weren't here.
You know how to tie your shoes now?
I finally learned. I've been wearing flip-flops my whole life just because I couldn't learn how to tie shoes. No, I learned that we've had our mic set up incorrectly for about 2 years. We'll see if it makes a difference in our audio because I don't think it makes that big of a difference. But like our mic, I always thought it came out of the bottom, or that's the top of the mic. It like pointed directly at your mouth, and that's what I was trying to do. But I learned that it actually comes from the side, and we have it on like one side, and it's where the volume, the side where the volume button is on these mics. So maybe we'll have this profound.
Do we have it on the right side or the left side?
We've had it straight on, so it's been
everything on the right side.
It's been straight on, and so it's been picking up like the reverb around the room. Anyways, maybe that's been our issue with growing this podcast. Like we've been trying to get to 50,000 subscribers, and it's just been a journey. And it's because our sound has been so bad. You disagree?
I'm sure that's it.
Yeah.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
I was telling Sean this podcast would not happen without Khalil and Lauren and before Ethan.
Yeah.
I just show up.
You just show up. Well, that's good. Well, we've got someone showing up with us, Sean, today. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. You've known Martin for 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Oh, more than that, yeah.
Yeah,
something like
it's
that.
been a while.
I met you shortly after that too.
I forget where you're from, but from your accent, is it like Alabama?
Minnesota. Minnesota. Yep.
Oh, Mato. Yeah, I knew it was one of the two.
Martin, what's your Minnesota experience? You ever been up there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Minnesota.
Any good Minnesota stories for us?
I went to camp there when I was like 12 years old. That was formative. Well, one thing is land of the million lakes or whatever.
1,000 lakes.
And
10,000. Yep.
yeah, 1,000 lakes.
10,000 lakes.
Did you know Oklahoma has more lakes than Minnesota?
I did not.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that. Is that
we
true?
have more. We have more.
know.
Yeah, and we have more shoreline in Oklahoma than all three coasts of the United States:
Wow.
the Gulf, the Pacific, and the Atlantic.
You're making Oklahoma sound a little better than it probably is. What's is this all just the man-made lakes
it's all
and ponds?
Yeah, it's man-made stuff, but it's true, or used to be true. Maybe it's not now.
That's interesting.
Hey, another fact, because we've had some really hot weather here. It's 111. Was that last week, Clay?
Yeah, last Tuesday.
On a Tuesday.
But the feels like was like 118.
Yeah. Well, the widest spread between the highest high and the lowest low in a year was at Veneta, Oklahoma, with a high that year of 113 and a low of minus 31.
Wow.
Wow.
There you go.
So
Now, anybody want to check that out? I've said that for a long time, and a couple of times I've checked it out and said, that can't be right. But I'm not checking it again, but that 140, whatever.
So is this?
We thought
144 degrees.
Minnesota was bad for weather swings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's.
Well, should we, like, is this supposed to translate into the business podcast if there's like highs and lows and like big swings? Is that what you're trying to get into?
And it gets real hot. It gets real hot on occasion and cold.
No,
Customers
man.
go cold.
That's true.
My only time in Minnesota was visited Minneapolis, University of Minnesota area, for about a couple days, and it was in the middle of December, and I had no idea why I was there because it was so cold. But you guys are used to that. The tunnels underneath the campus of Minnesota were wild. Like you could just see the entire university underground. Pretty interesting. What's it?
Hey, is that
Go ahead.
Is that Hubert Humphrey Center still there with the inflatable roof in Minneapolis where they play football and stuff?
You're making Sean look bad.
The Metrodome? There was the old Twin Stadium or whatever. They built a new stadium. I'm not sure.
But I mean, it had an inflatable roof.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that collapsed with the snow.
Well, that was going to be my story because I was up there with a business broker when they were building that, and they had just inflated it. And I asked him, I said, it was just a blowing up deal with cables holding it
Yep.
down, And I asked the guy, I said, man, what happens when it snows? And he says, oh, they get that all figured out. About 3 months later, he sent me a picture. The snow had collapsed the dome.
Oh
But
man.
that's getting to be a long time ago.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, Sean, let's talk about your business a little bit for a second in Minnesota. You're a cabinet shop. Did it always start that way?
It started, my passion for just being involved with the trade started when I could walk, right? My dad was a carpenter, so I was always following him around, getting in his way more or less, but learning. Then I took a shop class in high school and really found that I loved woodworking and wanted to pursue that as a career. Probably really made that decision by about 15, 16, and installed my first kitchen when I was 16 years old. And started.
Was that a job you
business.
did by yourself, or is your dad's job that you installed for him?
So my dad never got into the cabinetry. He was always just window siding, roofing, framing. So that was a job I did completely on my own. Actually had an aunt help me a little bit with the finish process, but yeah, it was just a small little 20 by 20 garage that we did it out of, and made it happen. Started doing fireplace mantles for a guy in Hutch, and just kind of started taking off, and we needed a bigger shop, so we moved to Cokato.
Very interesting.
How long ago was that?
Well, we moved to Cokato when I was 20. So, and I say we, it was really just me, and I had maybe one or two part-time helpers at the time. And so I'm 30 now, so a decade. And it was going pretty strong by the time we moved to Cokato already. So I really, like I say, probably had about 3-4 years into it when I did make that move.
Cokato, you're just outside of the Minneapolis area, right?
Yeah, not too far. We do a lot of work around Lake Minnetonka, so we're about 35-40 minutes from there.
Gotcha.
If you want to go to Twin Cities or the airport, you're about an hour.
Okay. Gotcha. And man, did you sell those first jobs that you were doing? Or was it just kind of like somebody heard that you were a cabinet shop guy and said, hey, can you do this?
Well, so actually what happened was my aunt and uncle were the two people that were like, okay, you can use our garage, because my parents were like, I don't know about all the dust and don't know about the equipment and the car sitting outside. And so my aunt's like, I think we could make something work. And so, they started seeing some fireplace mantles, and they're like, hey, we kind of want a kitchen. So we ended up kind of trading a kitchen, building their kitchen for the use of their garage, which
Perfect.
my uncle had a hobby shop in there already anyway, because he was building fly fishing rods by hand. Using bamboo to make a custom rod, and that was pretty cool. He taught me that process too.
That's cool. You're a fisherman, right?
I like to get out when I can.
Yeah, you were telling me you go to, is it South Dakota or North Dakota? Did you ever figure that out?
I went to South Dakota here over the 4th of July. That's the second trip out there. But prior to that, a lot of time when, growing up, my dad and my mom took us up to Mille Lacs Lake fishing. So walleye, it's a really good walleye lake. We'd always get our limits.
Gotcha.
I remember we had a group webinar with a bunch of cabinet makers a few years ago, and you participated from an ice shed sitting on you remember that?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, he was out sitting in a shed on a frozen lake.
I think that was up on Gull. Yep.
Yeah.
That's wild. Man, so interesting. Is it not just like freezing the entire time you're out there, or is the shed pretty warm?
Well, I try to not be the one who has to go out there and set it all up. If you can just go from your heated truck to the heated fish house, you're doing pretty good.
Nice. That's great. That's great. So you did your first job for your aunt and your uncle. When did you get your next job? Like, what was the process there? Was it just a family friend or what?
Well, and I did my first kitchen for my aunt and uncle. I guess the jobs were already kind of rolling in with fireplace mantles, and I actually went into the Hutch Mall at the time and met a guy by the name of Tim Burley. He had a fireplace pool and spa, he called it. And so I started building all his mantles. I just went in there and said, "Hey, where are you getting your mantles?" And he was like, "Well, we get them online and they take kind of a long time and they're not always the best quality." So he was super excited about that relationship and probably built a couple hundred of them for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it was perfect working for a small space,
Yeah, absolutely. And so when did you get back into, I mean, you're doing these mantles, when did you get back into doing kitchens?
Well, the first kitchen was my aunt and uncle's, and that was kind of the segue into doing more kitchens and realizing, oh wow, I like kitchens. You can cut all the parts out, and there's some repeatability, and you can scale it a little bit easier. So started pursuing those type of projects more, and you quickly realize that a 20 by 20 gets really tight. 400 square feet is not enough room to do kitchens effectively.
And you were building all these on a table saw?
Yeah.
You
Got it,
man.
Martin.
So-
Just using a table saw. Some of the first projects, even to using a skill saw, and
Oh, wow.
and just being very primitive, but still getting it. You can get it looking good if you take your time and just have a want to get it done right.
So you're in high school at this point. I mean, are you getting buddies to help you? Is it just you only in that garage? What's that look
No,
like?
I was getting buddies to help me. They'd come in after school and help me cut out the sheet goods and put together parts. So I was definitely leveraging that.
Would you pay them or no?
I would, yeah, definitely.
Nice.
And I was a kid in high school getting business calls, and the teacher says you gotta go to the principal because you can't be taking phone calls in class.
That's great.
Yeah, that was probably in business class too, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was like
That's
a
funny.
stats class, and it was funny because I ran into a teacher here not too long ago, and he had brought up that story, and I was like, yeah, that happened. Yeah,
That's great.
Mark Twain said the thing to know about a student is what it is that keeps him from his studies. And that was it, taking business calls in class,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hey, I have a question for you. You're paying guys, you're buying lumber, buying sheet goods. How did you price your jobs?
Well, too cheap. That was
Well, how did you even come up with a price? I know we talked about that when we first met.
No, it's a very tough thing when you're first getting going and you've never done it before, right? Because you're guessing at the labor. How long is it going to take? And I was somewhat I had a part-time job at the time washing dishes, and I was making like $11 an hour. So in part, I was kind of thinking if I could make $15 an hour building cabinets, I'm winning. But the reality is I wasn't looking at the true cost of business, what it takes to have overhead and all the equipment. So it was really just a piece of paper writing down all the materials, what they're going to all cost, and then a guess on how many hours I'm going to have into it, and times that dollar figure I wanted to make per hour. And because I didn't really have overhead, that was about it.
Gotcha. That's very common. You see a lot of people, not even do the hour aspect. That might even be a little bit progressive for someone that's just starting out at that age. But they just take the materials and then, double it or something like that, and come up with their amount for the project. I know that's a really common one. When was your first lesson in? Go ahead.
I was just gonna comment on that and say it was interesting because I'd even asked my dad, how do you price it? And he would say things like that. Well, you take materials times 3, and you're probably pretty good. And there's a lot of merit to just some of those old principles that just do, in a lot of cases, work. If you run the numbers, it's probably not too far off. But to know your cost is so important, and I wish I had learned that a lot sooner. I give Martin a lot of credit for that because that was some of the things we went over in the coaching calls is, what are your margins? How much is your overhead, right?
Yep. What's the break even?
Yep.
Yeah. What was your first experience like? Was there a job that you just got burnt on because you didn't price it right and you said, I got to go back to my calculations and figure out a better bid for these jobs?
Well, I think it became a lot more real when we moved to Cokato and actually had a building we had to pay for, utilities that had to get paid for. Of course I was doing kind of trading my time for my uncle's space, but that's not real dollars, right? It's real time, but it's not at the time when you got your kid, you got time. So I think that became real, and I fortunately haven't made a mistake that's like, oh my goodness, we almost went under. But there was a couple jobs, probably actually later in my career, not that long ago, within the last 5 years, that were like, ouch, we need to have a process for signing off on stain colors so that we don't get into a $150,000 job and the customer says, that's not quite the color I want everything perfectly matched, and it's got to be, it now adds 40 grand to your finishing process, and you don't get paid for it because, it's not in the bid, it's just in the bid as a stain.
Man, so interesting, and I know there's a lot of contractors that have been down that road, and if they haven't, maybe they can learn before they do. You moved to Cokato at 20, you said, but it sounds like you were kind of picking up steam as you're graduating high school. What was the decision like not to go to college?
I had a lot of pressure in high school from even my shop teacher. He said, you're one of the best cabinet makers we've had come through here, and that was kind of cool to hear that from him. But he said, you should really go to college, you should get an education, right? And they were pushing that so hard. I said, I'm not going to college. And he said, oh, I really think you should, and I was like, and get a degree for what, and I see so many kids come out of high school and feel that pressure to go to college. And it's great if you want to be an accountant, a lawyer, if you have that path, and there are some things you need that college for. But I've been able to, I didn't choose the path of college, went out on my own and chose that direction. And it's kind of funny, you get into your mid-20s and you're making a good living while some of those people are starting to come out of college with all this debt.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it was kind of that I told you so moment, when I was about 25 and I sat down we took out my shop teacher for Applebee's, I think, and I was like, so it's working. and of course, he was super proud, and he's a great guy, and kept it humble, but it was fun to have that success, and it worked out for me, and try to pass that along to some of these kids, and I think the schools are transitioning now with the labor shortage in the trades. It feels like they're saying, oh, I guess going to be an electrician or a plumber or a cabinet maker isn't so bad. You can make a good living and not have all that debt.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really an important message, Sean. You obviously don't feel any regrets, or you don't feel like you're less of a person because you don't have a college degree. I encounter that all the time with people who have successful businesses but still will drop in conversation. Man, I don't have a college degree. You also don't have $100,000 in debt, So
Yeah,
there's
it's
more
very
these
awesome.
days. Schools are getting so expensive, man. I talk to kids all the time that are thinking about going to college, and it's like, $70,000 a year at a lot of these places. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a scam, I think, at a certain point when you're getting that pricey. Like the differentiation in the degree between a college that's 70,000 and 20,000. I mean, there are differences, but to a certain extent, what's the actual value comparatively? It doesn't make sense.
When we have kids, I'm going to say the only reason we're sending you to college is to make connections. If you go to Yale, Harvard, you're building those relationships. You're paying for the relationships. Because you can learn the skill on YouTube, right? In most cases. and if you need that specialized person when you're building the company, hire them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of wisdom from a 30-year-old guy. That really is. That's brilliant.
Well, at the same time, though, like, what's the reality is, what are your connections now, Sean? I mean, CEOs that are, head of big construction companies and other builders out there, or supply houses that you have real connections with. I mean, that's a valuable network. You're also doing work for high-end homes, so the owners of those homes are good connections. I mean, I would argue that you might even have potentially better connections. I mean, look at it. You know me and Martin. Like, what better connections would you want?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true. There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Awesome. But
there absolutely is value in a college degree, but I think that a lot of the things they say you can only get at college, I don't know that I completely agree in some ways. So.
Well, and the problem with networking at that age is you don't know what you're networking for, right? When you're in business, you have a purpose, you have an intention, and a reason to foster that relationship. So yeah, it's so true. You start a business, and that's one of the effects that I never would have even thought of. Is like, wow, you're getting to meet. We did a NBA referees house here not too long ago, and just great relationships, and you become friends with them, and you get invited to their Christmas parties, and yeah, it's really fun.
Did he invite you to put some money on a game or anything like that recently?
Nope.
No rigging going on.
Not that he's going to say on a podcast.
No.
Not as far as you know.
It's all been level. I asked him, I said, is there any of that going on, And he said, no, they're not rigged.
Not as far as you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Well, you really have said some really insightful things, but in the last, so it's been 14, 15 years, was there ever a time that you thought, man, I really screwed up. I shouldn't be doing this?
You know what, Martin? I think one of the realizations I had at 25 was, number one, my family has some history of alcohol being a problem, right? And so, same with my wife, her family has that. So we made a decision as a couple to say, hey, you know what? We don't have a problem. We're going to nip this in the butt ahead of time before it becomes a problem. We're not going to drink anymore because it's not helping us on our mission to get where we want to go. And when we stop drinking, we're like, what do we do now? And we got this extra time. so I'm like, you got to replace the habit, right? And so reading, business, really just like Martin, you've got a book, reading books like that, to keep educating yourself. When I graduated high school, I thought, oh, that's it. I don't have to ever open a book again. And that was the philosophy until I hit that 25 mark. And then my regret at 25 was not knowing or realizing that there's all these great books out there that can help you get where you want to go. And I lost that 7 years, but better to catch it at 25 than 55, right? So.
Oh, man.
Oh, absolutely. We got to title this episode "A Philosopher from the Northern Plains." I'm serious. This is great philosophy.
It's so true. I mean, I really don't drink that much. Martin, you don't drink. But I think there's serious consequences to saying yes to some things in your life because it makes you say no to others. And for you, for a long time, you saying yes to alcohol might have been no to reading business books and, growing and developing yourself. And there's always a trade-off. And I don't know that a lot of people realize in our culture that you don't necessarily have to drink to have fun, and you don't have to drink to relax. And I think those are lies that a lot of people buy into. And, you know, I'll have a beer every once in a while or something like that, but there's so many important things that you don't realize that you're trading for whenever you do those, you know, you have those behaviors. And now you see it in Oklahoma. I don't know what it's like in Minnesota, but we've essentially got a dispensary on every single corner now since the marijuana laws were passed. I would have never, I would have never thought, like 5 years ago, I would have been like, that's a joke, no way. But I mean, that's another trade-off that people are having to make at a younger and younger age, with the accessibility of all these stimulants out there. So, anyways.
Yeah, that's so true. And breweries around here, you know, there's one in every small town. So.
Yeah.
But what I'm kind of hearing is that there wasn't any time where you always thought this was a big mistake.
Absolutely not. I don't regret it at all.
That's cool.
Well, I'm real interested too in the evolution from a 20 by 20 garage, and we'll ask you to describe. I think I hear a CNC running in the background, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, to sophisticated shop. What can you think of any tipping points? You know, a decision that you made that I really have to suck it up, and I don't know. Like it could be hiring somebody, buying a $150,000 machine, renting a shop versus are there any tipping points where you really had to say, man, I don't know if this is going to work, and you made a decision and it turned out to be a big deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right around that age 25, I started realizing, like, you know, I'm halfway through my 20s and I'm doing all right, like, but I want to get to, you know, way bigger level. And so having that shift where you start pushing energy towards personal growth expands your mind to see, you know, I need to build a team, right? Now I've got to actually be intentional about building a great team that can service a growing clientele, because we were getting all the orders we could keep up with. I mean, I still work Saturdays, Sundays, but I mean, back then it was working on the saws Saturdays, Sundays, late into the evenings, you know. And so it was realizing that I need to figure out this hiring process and how to train people and how to lead people. And once we started, you know, reading John Maxwell and learning about the laws of that, the laws of growth, and applying it, well, now we started having success where, you know, we could actually keep team members employed and, you know, have them be doing that part of the process. So that allowed us to grow into, you know, we started with 400 square feet. We've got 8,000 square feet now. And it was, you know, not all in one day, but it was really, you know, we went to 4,000 square feet and we bought the CNC. That was huge. You know, getting the router was a game changer for sure.
Mm-hmm. What did it cost you roughly?
I got a steal of a deal on our machine. That was like $22,000, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
how did that happen?
Yeah, Did you literally steal it?
No, a guy in.
I mean, those are $125,000, $150,000 machine easily.
Yeah, and we've had it 5 years. This spring was 5 years, and it just let us down here a little bit ago. We had to get creative for a month while the parts were over in Italy, but up until that point, it worked great. We're actually getting to the point where we're thinking about a new one, and yeah, you're right, Martin. They're 150, 180, 200 grand.
Yeah.
You know.
And how did you get it for 22?
I bought a used one, right? And
right.
I found a guy locally that wanted to go from a 4x8 to 5x12, so he was just kind of taking up space in his shop, and he was happy with that. And it was 5 years ago too, so prices. You know, 22 grand meant something different 5 years ago.
Sure.
Right. But that's still a steal.
Yeah. Yeah,
Man.
It was.
That's great. And then the fact that it's lasted you 5 years, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I think the biggest shift for technology was getting that CNC and an edge bander, because that allowed us to go into the frameless world, which is a much more efficient build, but it's also a higher quality cabinet. You have to have precision equipment to be able to even do it. And people want more storage space inside their cabinets. They want a modern look. It's just where we see the market going. So we're like, we should get ahead of the curve. And now today I'm seeing shops just now getting into it, you know, and of course there's people that were ahead of us, but I kind of, that was huge to get ahead of that a little bit, at least for our area in Minnesota.
Can you, you said frameless. Probably everybody listening knows what we're talking about, but what's frame cabinet versus frameless? What's the difference?
Great question. So framed cabinetry is your traditional, you have the solid lumber face pieces and the doors, you know, install on top of that frame. And then a frameless box, you've got essentially your cases, your side walls of your cabinet make up it's a box, and then the doors hang right on top of that. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that clarifies it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we've talked about how you started right out of high school, and you're 30 now. Are you 30?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's what I thought, just wanted to make sure. But, I mean, that's 14 years of being in business, I mean, from its most basic form, right? And I think that what's amazing is there's probably not a lot of 30-year-olds that have had that much experience in business, and it just allows you to compound. It's not like you're just going to take a small step again and keep growing, but there's going to be a compounding factor to that of this. It's a big leap in the next year and an even bigger leap the year after. And I think that's something that we haven't talked about with college, and just even those people that are out there that are wanting to maybe start, like there's people that are listening that are not necessarily their own business owner, but maybe they're in construction, and that delay sets you back so much. Like the lessons that you're still learning lessons today, right? Yeah. It's never ending.
Oh, yeah.
But the lessons that you learned really early on, I mean, that you wouldn't have been this far without that. And I think I've been in business 7 years, in this business. And I just think about how much I've learned, and I'm learning each and every day. And to think that you're 14 years in business, is fantastic. What?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say you're absolutely right. You know, that time is so precious. Those years you spend in school are years you're not actually, you know, learning in the field. So the way I view it anyway, you know, it's you get the degree and you go into the field and you find out it's all changed anyway, you know.
Yeah. You guys you're growing. How many employees do you have now?
We've got about 12 employees.
12 employees.
Wow. Yeah.
You're in the millions in revenue. For a lot of cabinet shops, from my experience and speaking with them, there's so many of them that don't really break past that $1 million mark. They stay below that. Maybe they get a CNC machine, and if they do, they're just running that one machine. They've got maybe 3 to 6 guys in the shop, and they kind of just hang out at that level because they don't break past it. I think since the first time I spoke to you, you've been a big proponent of Grant Cardone and 10X. Maybe explain what 10X is, but how did you get into that? And I think that's played a big role in how you've continued to grow past that $1 million mark.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point, Khalil. I think back to about 25, that's really about when I found out about Grant Cardone and Valuetainment. And on the topic of Grant Cardone, you know, he's the one who pushes the, you know, self-education and learning and growing, you know, personal development. And so, you know, just continuing to do that has been huge.
That's great. And what is 10X?
10X is really just, you know, whatever you're doing or whatever you think your goal is, set the bar 10 times of that. So if you want to go to 3 million, think about 30 million, you know, and if you operate, you know, how would you have to operate to get to $30 million in revenue? And if you're falling short of that, say you do take those actions and you land at 15, well, you're still way farther than the $3 million goal that you initially would have had, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Really interesting, and I know that's been a huge thing for you. Is just like I'm striving for more and more and more, and it's helped you grow. What are some of the challenges currently that you guys are facing that you're kind of learning and walking through?
well, one of the things that we're trying to do is focus on like revenue per employee. And so, it really trying to strive to be at that 350,000 per head, and then getting to that level before we forward invest on more team members.
How did you
So we
get?
think,
What did you think of this like revenue per head?
so there's a company called Cardone Ventures that we've been following along with, and they talk about the science of business. And if you do the math, the best companies, not even the best, the companies that perform by putting 15 to 22% to the bottom line, those companies all generate about $350,000 per year per employee. And so there's the target is that 350, but really actually they say 500 is doable. So you're kind of getting to that 350, and then you're adding the next team member, and then you're moving forward. We're close, but it's definitely a mindset shift that has to happen with every single person on your team, because it's a different operating speed than what we were used to. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's something I measured for a long time with companies when I get new clients. And in Oklahoma, not just Oklahoma, but 150 is pretty good. I mean, that's what I see, and they're successful companies, but they're doing the 6 or 7% to the bottom line. And in passing, talking about a million, Khalil, there are 30 million, a little more than that, businesses in the United States, and only 4% ever make it to $1 million in revenue. So
Yeah.
you're exceptional in that regard.
And circling back to that $1 million mark, that was a tough one to cross, and that really took the leadership, learning, that personal growth to push and build a team, because now you can get to 800,000 with you and 3 guys, right? And maybe even less now with the inflation, but breaking past that $1 million mark was tricky. We stayed under it for a lot of years, and actually last year was our first year to actually break into. I think we did 1.4 last year, and we'll double that this year. So it's like once you get past it, now you can get to that 4 million. It seems like pretty
Easily.
I mean, I don't want to say easy, but it's the path.
Easier. It's easier to do
clear.
that than the get to $1 million.
Yeah.
That I agree with you 100%. I see it all the time. People bumping, they're looking at $1 million like it's some. It's a mental barrier, and it's the old Roger Bannister story. Nobody ran a sub 4-minute mile till he did, and then like 10 guys did within the next 4 months. How do you explain that? I don't know. But the second million's easier than the first million.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think it's a mental barrier, but it's also a systems and processes barrier, because your people have to change and the systems have to change to break past that million. And what we're seeing is that at about 3.5, 4.5, between 3.5 and 4.5, we're going to hit another break point. And so today we're really focusing on leadership development across our whole team, specifically our leadership team, where, getting them to understand, read the books, and develop themselves so they can be leaders. Because to get to, 8 or 10 million is now you have to have, you're no longer pulsing on every piece of the business, right? Like right now I have a pulse kind of on everything, but at 10 million, you have to trust that those people, those 3 or 4 people below you, have a pulse on everything. So you can.
How are you doing that? How are you executing the leadership development? I mean, you're just handing them a book and say, read it?
No, we do a weekly. We follow a EOS traction. So that's there's a scaling up, Vernon Harnish, and then there's traction. We chose traction, and so our leadership team meets weekly every Friday, and we put goals and set quarterly rocks, and that's one of the things we all try to have a book of the month, that we're reading together as a team, in addition to our books we're trying to read on our own time.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
That's one way. I mean, there's certainly we're always looking for new ways to improve and try to grow ourselves faster.
You've mentioned systems a lot. Can you tell us what some systems are that you have in place, and how you have them? I mean, are they actually written out? Are they videos? Are they just something people know how to do? Can you describe your...
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of platforms and systems, right? So the platforms that we use are things like Trello with the job cards. Recently, thanks to Khalil, integrating HubSpot as our CRM and getting that dialed in and integrated to all of our different platforms like the QuickBooks and email and all that. And then there's the SOPs. We're finding that checklists seem to work the best, but that's because we're hiring people, we're training them. We're actually transitioning to YouTube videos, where we just put a YouTube video. I make a quick video on how to do a task, and then now the next person that's trained in or getting trained in watches that video, and if they got questions, they can definitely ask, but it solves a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that your technology really can influence your systems. The software that we use influences the systems we have in our company. We've talked about that on recent episodes, Martin. How is Trello impacting the systems you create? How is HubSpot impacting the systems you create inside of the different areas of your business, from production to sales to administration?
Well, HubSpot being the newest thing, it has been really good. Still learning the nuts and bolts. Obviously, I've got got my head wrapped around it, but we're definitely using that for being able to see what's in the pipeline, for sales, and being able to, like just last night, I was looking on a couple deals that one of our sales guys is doing, and just following that conversation, seeing how it's going, where you can get a feel without having to go ask them, how's that Smith job coming along? When's that going to close? You can see the phone conversations and the emails back and forth, and it's just all in one spot. So that's huge for that, and then all the metrics that you get with HubSpot for being able to track your sales volume and how your ads are doing and everything like that is what we're excited about.
It's a mindset shift to think about systems in that way and to invest in technology in the way that you have. What did it used to be like? Let's go back to 25-year-old Sean, right? What were the systems like for sales? What did sales look like as a whole? And how is it different now? How did that transformation come about?
Back then it was a lot more in my head. I tried to keep notebooks on customer lists. Obviously, I think I had integrated QuickBooks at that time, so we had the customer database, at least with that.
Sure.
But definitely a lot more in my head, and that was fine then, because if you're gonna operate with less than 3 people, you probably don't need all of it. Not that it would be a bad thing to have, because it certainly, I think it could make even a 3-man team more efficient. But when you have that, when you start building out that team and you need that communication to channel, flow through, that's where our break point came with it. Whereas what we're doing isn't working anymore when I hired my first estimator, because now I'm not touching every customer anymore. So we got to have a way to access the, how is he making that call? Is he following up? I guess ways to measure the team's performance, right?
Yeah. When you think about, you're in a smaller area for Minnesota, you're not too small, but you're outside, you're not in a big city. Do you ever think that you're going to outgrow this area? Does that become a challenge ever for you as you think about reaching that 30 million mark maybe? What is that going to look like? How are you thinking about approaching new locations and servicing new areas or whatever it might be?
Yeah, that's a topic we've just been discussing recently, actually. So our goal is to go national. Obviously, we're focusing on our core market first, and we want to make sure we're capitalizing on that. We think we can easily be a $20 million company in Minnesota, servicing local, just the business in the 2-hour area. And maybe 20 is a stretch, but right around that 15, 20. And then from there, we start looking at other markets, Zach, our estimator's from Chicago, so we were talking about, do we start leveraging, once we get past that 10 million, do we start talking to people in Chicago, or, so we don't have the path exactly set out for that step by step. It's still fluid and being made, I guess.
What does travel time look like? I mean, you're in the small area, and if you're going to be doing jobs all over Minnesota, how do you equate that? Do you set up another shop at another certain distance, or how are you approaching that?
We're definitely, especially over the next 3 years, we're definitely keeping acquisitions as a keeping our minds open to acquisition for that. One of the things we're realizing is what makes us different and better than the big shops of the world is that we handle it from design to install, and the customers place a lot of value on that installation, which is the toughest piece of the business to scale, because you got to be personable, and you got to know how to install cabinets, right? So we've got 2 great guys that do our installs now, and they're both probably ready to take on another, go their own way and run their own crews. But that'll be what we're trying to navigate in outside markets. How do we maintain that, Sean's Cabinetry quality? Because if you can take great cabinets and make them look not so great with a bad install.
Yeah.
So we don't want our name on something that isn't put in and put together right, and things falling apart because the contractor in Arizona didn't do his job right.
Yeah. Martin, do you have a question?
Well, I kind of starting with the end, and you maybe answered a little bit, but the place I start with most people is our vision. We're halfway through this, but what is your vision for Sean's Cabinetry? You said go national, and you said you're working on it, but what's your vision?
We set out, when I started the company, the vision is simply to provide the best quality cabinetry to great customers, and so there's a lot of we got our 10-year targets, we've got our 5-year targets, but our vision is just, high-end cabinetry, to as many people as we can service. Which actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Martin. I'm actually reading a book that's making me rethink the vision and gaining clarity to that. So we'll probably actually be sending something over to Khalil to update the website with here shortly, because we're talking, the mission and the vision, and I think a lot of it was I just had a passion, right? I just set out, fell in love with doing the craft, and then once I felt like by about 25, felt like I had learned and mastered the craft. It was going forward with, now how do I master the craft of business, and so it's changing a little bit, but it's fun, it's exciting. I like the transition.
Well, that leads me to another question. Might be a little strange, but what do you think about when you go to work now? When you show up at 7:30 or 6 or 5 or 9 or whenever, what are you thinking about as a general rule?
A lot of my thought has become more around the team we're building. You spend more time thinking about how your decisions are going to impact the people that are, trusting you with with their livelihoods. So you're wanting to make the right moves and do the right things and think things through to make sure we're all going to prosper. And then of course, without the customer, there doesn't need to be a team. So I'm always thinking about how do we make the product better, how do we service them better, how do we get back to customers faster, get more, the quote out faster, return the call faster. Those are the big things. Marketing, as of recently this year, has really been something we've been thinking a lot more of. Working with Khalil, it's opening our eyes up to the possibilities and working on more content, and just so we can inform the buyer, because they're already looking at somebody's website for information. Nobody's calling these days, without informing themselves, because we got the internet.
Right. Well, you've mentioned, I talk about, and we talk about on this podcast a lot, the 4 areas of business with leadership: guiding the business, getting the business, doing the business, and administering the business. You've already talked quite a bit about guiding it, the leadership. You're talking about marketing. You obviously know and want to improve the actual function of building and installing. On the administrative side, can you talk about some of the things that maybe surprised you from being in your garage to where you are now, that you had to learn about, that you knew nothing about, that you weren't even aware was a part of business? Those are the things that jump up and grab a lot of guys.
Yeah, the admin side of the business, that you never would have thought, back in the garage.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought that you would need, almost need a full-time bookkeeper, right? Just entering in the vendor bills and all that stuff. Recently,
who would have thought you need books?
Yeah. At one time, there
bookkeeper.
was a thing where we didn't even have, QuickBooks. So, you've got, really what we're finding is there's those 4 areas of business, right? You do, like Martin, you just said, you've got the administration. So we're feeling really good about the administration. My mom actually does our books. We've got a CPA doing payroll, and we're feeling great about that, and then you've got to have the team that makes sure the product's getting built correctly to the customer spec. And we got a great foreman, we've got great installers, and we got that piece handled really well. And then you've got to have somebody chasing the marketing, right? So you can get the business, the sales and the marketing piece. And sales, I feel like we got a great sales team, but the marketing piece we're learning. So we're starting to put more effort on that, and kind of craft out a role, as right now a partnership with Khalil, and me and him tackling that side of it. And then the HR, the human side of the business, is the piece where right now I'm seeing as our next break point, because to get to that $10 million business, that's a full-time role, just chasing, figuring out the legalities of people and hiring the people and posting the ads to attract, to actively be seeking out great talent, all the time, and calling them back and keeping them, hey, this is where we're at now, try to have it so when you need to make that hire, you've got 25 people ready to take the position, right?
Well, you're nailing it. That all administrative stuff, is books and using the books, and HR and corporate governments and insurance and banking relationships and regulatory, workers' comp, just all OSHA. I don't know if you've ever had OSHA in your shop, but I like to ask guys, I say, you got a Form 300, which is an OSHA form for incident? And a lot of people go, what? I said, well, anyway.
Yeah, gotta have all that stuff.
Kind of in one of the areas I love, of course, how do you use your books?
Well, the goal of great books is to make great decisions, right?
Ooh, you're good, man.
Sounds like you've read a book or two.
Well, I read The Profit Problem.
This is a good moment for us to pause for our sponsored ad. The Profit Problem by Martin Holland. Check it out if you'd like to have less
they
stress,
say I
more
make
time,
money, why
more
don't I
money.
have any? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, really, it's a lot of people don't keep books other than to pay taxes, which they do with bank statements, because they don't know why they're useful. And I was kind of leaning into margins, and you understand what margins are and break even, and you know, I don't know if you look at your books every day, but you look at them.
Weekly or
regular basis.
twice a week. Try to look at them once a day, but the reality is you get busy. Try to save it for like Fridays and Wednesdays. The having great books. When we started working together, Martin, that was a struggle we were having, because with all the matching issues. You build a job one month and then install it the next, and you invoice it for the next, and it looks like you made great money in July, but you actually made good money in June, and July is going to be a tough one. So, we're actually, getting just now, and I think, actually getting the true numbers every month, having the systems, in place where guys are doing inventory, and we're doing the WIP reports, and everything is dialed in. And it takes a while to build those systems out, that's for sure. But the power of having that dashboard and the data there to be able to make a decision, we hired this person to assist in, the office, and is it working? Is that decision paying off? Or do we need to, transition, or do we need to encourage, or, just helps you make those decisions and catch them before they sink your ship.
I don't know if you want to say this, but what kind of margins do you shoot for?
Well, when we quote jobs, we're aiming for 40%.
Okay.
So,
And does competition let you do that? Or, I mean, are you butting heads on price, or do you have such an advantage through your name and quality that you don't worry about what the competitors do?
So it's a multifold answer. I guess the price is only an issue in an absence of value. So if you position yourself with a great attitude, can do, love to help you, we want to make it work, we're your guy, and you're getting back to people fast, that right there in this market right now, if you can answer the phone, you'll get the job. So price is not a problem. It's only a mindset. If you think, you get so many guys that say, I can't get no work. Well, then how does Gucci sell their products? You don't see discounts at Louis Vuitton, Gucci. They're still selling. So,
Right.
Or even
Yep.
Birkin bags, $100,000 for a bag. So,
Have you got a Gucci store there?
we got one in the Mall of America, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh, really?
everything's in the Mall of America. Look at that.
Yeah.
What the thing about current challenges people are having, you hear about, especially in the trades, materials, labor are issues. What are you seeing materials-wise these days right now? Is it ever a challenge on certain aspects of hardware or lumber, anything like that?
Material was a definite challenge last year. It's still lingering, but I think we're kind of on the back end of the material challenges. It feels.
How did you
like
handle that
knock
last
on
year?
wood. In Q3 of last year, I spent like 80 hours of time personally calling vendors. Are we going to have material next week? Are we going to have this? Are we going to have drawer slides? Are we going to have it? Can we buy ahead? We had at one point an extra couple hundred sheets of material on hand just to ensure we weren't going to run out. And looking back, we never did run out. We never did get the call where, we can't ship it to you today. Actually, there was one thing: the drawer slides, Bloom drawer slides, through our vendor. There was a time early this year where they said we're on back order, we can't get them, and we had, because of that time I put in, we had a pallet of slides sitting on the shop floor that we could pull from, and it kept us going. So, we're trying to be proactive on all these things to make sure we can still get our clients the great good quality products.
In a good time too, and a good deliverable.
Yeah, exactly.
What,
And then to touch
ahead.
on your people side of the business, I guess I just got to give a shout out to our team because they're awesome. Jace,
Yeah.
he's been with us,
We've
5
got to shout out
years.
Jace. I think I've done it in 2 episodes
Yeah.
already, but again,
Yeah,
we'll
he
shout out
just crossed
Jace.
5 years with us. So now he's a lifer. No,
He's
no, I hope so anyway. But no, he's been great. Jeff, all the guys, every single one of them. They show up every day and they're committed to winning and being a part of the success and the journey we're on. So you gotta have a great team if you're gonna scale up your business.
How do you find them though? Like, is labor? You were just hiring for a CNC position. Is that ever an issue with getting people in the door?
You know what? I don't want to say it's not an issue. It's obviously something you have to do and needs to get done. It requires dedication, but I think mindset has so much to do with it. I talk to all these contractors, of course we're selling cabinets to them, and they say, oh, there's no great people. And I say, well, have you ever thought about saying there are great people and I just got to find them, like they're out there because your competitors have great people.
Yeah.
There's companies that are dominating the market and they have great people. So is it that there's not people, or is it that your mindset is that there's no great people, and who wants to go to work for somebody who says, no, all people suck and there's no great people?
Right.
So,
Sounds like Martin was your business coach at one point, but maybe I don't know.
He
maybe
was.
that's
Oh,
not
there
He
it
was,
him.
yeah.
There is a fantastic book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And Sean, you just nailed it. You just nailed it. Even if you don't believe it, say it. There are good people out there. I just have to find them. Even if you don't believe it.
Yeah.
Because it will change how you think. And that's brilliant.
So
That-
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Number one thing is mindset, right? It's always starts
Yeah.
with your mindset.
Yeah.
The number two thing is
Yeah.
strategy, right? We pivoted during that COVID lull where everyone was laying everyone off. And we took it as an opportunity to hire, 4 or 5 people. So I think we had 4 when COVID started, 4 people in the shop, and now we got 12. So we've hired.
See, and that's one of those tipping points where you made a decision, you committed to hiring 4 guys, and I'm guessing, but you're not sure that the work's out there. I mean, maybe you're pretty confident to pay for 4 new guys because everybody else is laying off, but you did it, and the work was there, and here you go.
Yeah, in that time it was a risk, right? Because it was kind of it wasn't an all or nothing bet, but it was going, putting 40% of the chips on the table, saying, I think this COVID thing is gonna be all right. I think we're all gonna be okay, and I think that because people are locked down and in their homes, they're probably gonna start looking at their cabinets and going, ugh. So they're gonna maybe be calling us, and the fact that the government decided to print $4 trillion, that certainly added to the money being there for the projects. So
Right.
yeah, but it was.
Hey, I want to
Go ahead.
change the subject just a little bit, but I want to make sure we talk about it. How do you manage, this is kind of a pivot, but how do you manage your customers' expectations? Okay.
Well,
Especially when there were things like delays on material and I just want to know how you do it because that is a huge component.
yeah, great question, Martin. We actually have a client expectation document that we run through a checklist with every client that signs up. Most of the time, that checklist is actually something that's in mine and Zach's head, where we're making sure we go through it. If I have any intuition that says this client maybe doesn't understand all of what we talked about along the way, or they're newer to the cabinetry buying experience, I'll actually physically lay that paper down and just go one by one through that list with them to make sure, and then have them sign it. So that's how we manage it. There's always new things that come up, and you just add them to that checklist.
That is the great benefit of having a checklist, is that now you can add to it,
Yep.
right? No, I think that's That's awesome.
The other thing is, having the attitude that the customer is always right, but then also being able to negotiate and reason, because sometimes, a customer can be unreasonable, and you have to say, well, it is a piece of wood, like it has this grain, or whatever that example, or the stain, it does this thing here. We actually have very, very few people that it's ever an issue, because we communicate that on the front end and share those challenges and offer them, hey, we can do something about it, but it's going to cost another 10 grand or whatever that is. There's veneer we can buy that's grain matched, sequential, and it's going to run around your whole room, but it's going to be an upcharge. So
Right.
So communication.
Yeah, and that, I call that document you're talking about a positioning document, but it's so important, because I say, how many kitchens have you put in the last 16 years?
Yeah.
500?
Oh,
how
you're
many
asking
has
me?
that? Yeah, asking you.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I think we did 100, a little over 100 last year. So yeah,
Okay.
you're probably pretty close to that 500 number.
So you've done 500, your average customer's done how many?
Probably one or two.
Oh, probably
or
zero.
Their first one. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen and who doesn't?
Yeah.
And if you take the time to explain them ahead of time, I think that's another brilliant idea. Heads off. Do you wind up having to negotiate on price, or do you negotiate on price?
I'm not gonna lie and say no, never. But what we try to actually do, and especially in the last couple of years, as you read and educate and learn and grow, some of that education is sales training and reading books on sales, and we really are big on adding value. If we're in a position where we're up against another qualified competitor and they like us a little better, if we could just match the price, we'd love to do it with you. Well, how about we add this feature, or we add handles, or some more value to the project, instead of reducing the price. And usually that 9 times out of 10, that works every time.
That's really good. How are you planning to keep your people motivated, not just in this season, but as you scale to 10 million, in this next bump that you might see at 15 million? How are you planning on motivating your leadership group that you have right now?
Well, I think it starts with me, right? Keeping myself motivated, keeping myself excited, making sure the vision's clear, we have a path. Further aligning the team with the vision and the mission to get us to where we want to go. But then also hiring people that are already, motivated to some degree. If you get the right people, they're already excited about life and, happy to be, involved, really being disciplined on the culture, not letting people that are negative in. Thinking back when me and Martin were working together, there was a time where we had to make a really tough decision. We had a great guy working for us, and he was producing. They really could get kitchens built fast, but the problem is we're trying to scale up the team, and he's out there being negative and brings the production down on 3 other guys because he's having a bad day. And after we kind of talked to him multiple different times, we just had to cut the cord on it, and we said no more. We're not bringing in negativity into our environment, and if it does happen, if it somehow slips through the cracks, we're cutting the head off right away.
Yeah, culture is so important, especially if you're trying to grow that big, and you're trying to keep people motivated and positive, those kinds of things. You can't allow a poor culture, poor values seep into your business. So really good point.
That
there.
goes back to the mindset you talked about too. If you don't think there are good people out there who are positive and engaged and interested in what you're doing and not just working for a paycheck, if you don't think they're out there, you're not going to have them.
Yeah.
If that's the only type of person you can tolerate, you will find them and keep them.
That's absolutely true, Martin.
Yeah. Well, man, we've talked about quite a bit here. It's really good to hear your story and to see what you're running into as you scale and how you're approaching it. I think the philosopher from the, what did you say, the Northern Plains, Martin?
The Northern Plains, the philosopher of the Northern Plains.
That's your new title.
It's
Get
so-
rid of
I mean,
CEO, get rid of
yeah.
owner, philosopher of the Northern Plains.
The philosopher.
I love it.
Oh, it's everything you said today, Sean. I'm just sitting here with my jaw on my chest at 30 years old, that you know that already, and it just continued to grow. I mean, will you still talk to us like when you're head of a top 50 company
Oh,
in the
heck
United
yeah.
States and
Eh,
New York,
You always-
30th floor penthouse on looking over Central Park?
You know, Martin, we joke, right? But absolutely, absolutely. You know, I place a lot of value on the mentors that have helped me along the way, you know, you being one of them. And, you know, we've had others, and it's just, they're the building blocks to get you to where you want to go. So, absolutely.
Well, the thing I have to point out here is that Sean did it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people hear it, listen to it. It's like going to a seminar and hearing this huge motivating speaker, and you're just going ape. You walk out of there, you're all fired up. You get back to work, and you do nothing.
Yeah.
And you didn't really give us a really fearful tipping point. I know you've had them, but it takes courage. I mean, because everything's a bet, and it takes courage to hire those guys. It didn't take as much courage as I thought to buy the CNC at $22,000, but still, at the time, $22,000 was probably a big chunk of your bank account, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of money back then.
At that time,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, I think
congratulations on that.
Yeah, and circling back to that tipping point, you know, I think there was one time where we were in a spot where a job just was not going our way. We could not get that thing to come out, and the client was, I mean, to go into the story a little bit, one of the things that happened was we delivered the cabinetry, and they didn't have any garage doors on the front of on the garage, and so there's this pile of sand sitting out in the driveway, and it's a windy day in the country. And the guys, you know, standard procedure, you get the cabinets kind of coming in the house, and I think they had a few too many to stage out in the house, so they left some sit in the garage, and that wind blew sand on top of those cabinets. Now, these were primed only cabinets, so it wasn't the end of the world. You know, they had to get painted anyway. Homeowner comes home and just loses it. You know, there's sand on these cabinets, these are brand new, you know, and so it was like from that point, everything we did was wrong. You know, we just got nitpicked, and so there was all these things going around with this pretty good sized job, you know, and then we had a couple of houses, we had just more work than we could handle, and our main assembler quits. You know, he decides I'm done, you know, because I mean, we were coming in on Sundays, you know, trying to get this job, you know, we had to rebuild cabinets on it, and just for the silliest things. But it was at that point where I was like, oh man, this is tough, just getting beat down, you know. And I mean, I kind of view my business as a baby, so I'm never gonna, you know, throw it to the side or give up on it. But that was a time where it was like, how much more can I take, you know? And man, looking back, the timeline on that, I kind of look at that as like the bottom, you know, like just everything going wrong. And within 6 months' time of that event happening, we had hired a great shop foreman that's still running the shop now. We found some great other, you know, sanders. You know, we got Nora, she's in the office now. We found some key people, and we dug our way out of that hole. And I guess that was really a big event. You know, looking back, it was fun to overcome that challenge, and gives you more confidence for the future.
Absolutely, always does. And you know, any struggle you bump up against, it's only going to make you stronger and help you grow. So much good good wisdom in this episode from you, Sean. We really appreciate you being on. And we'll probably have you back on as you hit that 30 million mark here in like 18 months or so. We'll be ready to have you back on.
What is that?
And
Christmas of 2023, we'll have him on.
Yeah, perfect.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Hold me accountable.
There we go.
Perfect. No, it's been a pleasure, Sean. Thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing your story and so much with our audience. And yeah, we'll catch you around soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun. Always great to talk to you both.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Cashflow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.